At parties, when people ask me what I do for a living, I say, I touch naked people for money. As a massage therapist, I find that getting out in front of the joke helps to curtail a lot of the sex worker quips that I tend to get otherwise. When people find out that I'm a massage therapist, there's this inevitable series of questions that's usually pretty similar. So, yes, I touch feet a lot, and no, I don't mind. Yes, sometimes people do smell. And that happy endings joke, yes, I've heard that a lot. The job isn't for everyone. And at one point in my life, I actually really questioned whether it was for me. But then I met someone who changed everything. A number of years ago, I was about to see my last client for the day, and I was exhausted. I was still getting used to life as a full-time massage therapist. See, I'd left my career in corporate communications. I was like a director at a nonprofit where I would do really important things like write annual reports no one would read. Meticulously create speeches for the CEO that he would never practice and so would just massacre. And media train military scientists, which I think speaks for itself. I was kind of wondering what impact I was having on the world. Really heated exchanges over violet versus aubergine for the new brand logo just didn't leave me feeling like I was making that impact on the world that I had dreamed of. And I had been doing massage on the side for a while for fun, and I thought maybe this would be a more fulfilling profession. Financially, it was really risky, as lots of people were very happy to warn me about moving from a steady paycheck, and a pretty good one, to the ups and downs of client service. But I did it. And it was true. I mean, some weeks I would be booked solid, no problem. But other weeks it was like crickets chirping. And it wasn't too long before I started getting really twitchy and nervous about my financial situation, and I was contemplating getting a roommate. And I mean, I was in my 30s at that point, so like going back to the land of self-assembly furniture with names like Dorcas and Flubin and eating ramen and negotiating for bathroom time was not something that I was really into. All of this was weighing really heavily on me that day as I was about to go out and greet my last client, who was brand new. And he was sitting out in the reception area looking kind of apprehensive. And he was older, maybe like in his 70s. He was tall and thin and just kind of slumped forward in this sort of near fetal position. And I welcomed him and I brought him back into the therapy room, and we started to go through his health history and all the normal stuff, mild hypertension, he'd had a hip replacement. And then I get to the point on his form and I say, I see that you've checked the boxes next to depression and grief process. And he kind of slumped even more. And he said, my wife died a few years ago. And I never thought that I would be alone at this age. And so I went online, trying to meet someone. And I actually did. And her name's Maria, and she lives in Mexico, and she's wonderful. She's in her 20s. And I know that that's weird, but she gets me. And I've been there, a couple times over the last year, and every time I went, it was incredible. And I have these 3 grown kids. And when I told them about Maria and our plan for her to move to the States and get married, they said, that's disgusting. They said that I was disgusting, and they haven't talked to me since then. So a few weeks ago, Maria says, I can't move with you to the States because if I leave, my family will starve without my income. So I gave her money, a lot of it. And then a week after the transfer went through, she broke up with me. It turns out she's had a boyfriend in Mexico the whole time. So here I am. My wife's dead. My kids won't talk to me. And God help me, I'm still in love with Maria. And he just stops and he wipes the tears from the corners of his eyes and he says, I have no idea why I just told you all of that, or like why I'm even really here, or what you could possibly do for me. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, whoa, this is crazy. And it's not just because his story is so wild, but because I feel like I kind of get where he is. Because when I had left my job in corporate communications, I was also in the process of leaving a relationship that I had really struggled to try to keep together. But in the end had to admit that her heart was somewhere else the entire time. And as we were splitting up, she got this call from her accountant saying she owed all this money on her taxes, and I knew she didn't have it. So out of my savings, I paid them for her, knowing that she was never going to pay me back. So we're sitting there, and I'm thinking, here we are, these two dummies with our broken hearts and our empty pockets. And I'm thinking, God, what can I do for him? And so kind of jokingly, I say, well, how about an hour of not that? Thank God he laughed. And he said, yeah, you know what? An hour of not that sounds really good. So for the next 50 minutes, I mean, I gave him a massage, but it was like something else happened. I'd always been a really pragmatic massage therapist up to that point, you know, like muscles and connective tissue. I was not going to try to rebalance your chakras with a Tibetan singing bowl or anything. No offense. But that session was different. The whole time I worked on him, I just had this really strong image that the two of us were like in the ocean. And I was standing there, and he was like in front of me, and I was just holding his head so that he was steady and safe, and he could just float. And after the session, he gave me this huge hug, and he had tears in his eyes again, but he was smiling, and he squeezed my arms, and he just looked down at me, and he said, thank you. And I wanted to say, no, thank you, because I have no idea what the hell just happened in there, but it felt like magic. And if that's what this job can be, then I know that I made the right choice. But instead, I just smiled and I nodded. And, you know, I never saw him again. But that didn't really surprise me, because when he was leaving that day, he looked a little too much like Michael Landon at the end of every episode of Highway to Heaven for me to think that he was going to be back again. There's one other question that a lot of people ask me when they find out that I'm a massage therapist, which is the pay good? And I say, you know, there are easier ways to make a living, but it's a really great way to make a life.